Benjamin can have love for the truckie. Beautiful minds, but we love getting ugly. Risk takers with a clover, man, we love getting lucky. You run, we chase fire, I love when it ducks me. Tones go off, house watch, read the address out. 1075, get up off the magic couch. 500 gallons prepared for the baddest drought. Who else you want on the way when disaster's out? Can't even get a little bit rattled when you enter with exit apparel. Mayday, member down, they'll drag you. You won't get this from every Tom, Dick, and Harold, but here's a view from the top floor with Mickey Farrell.
You build a brotherhood. We're all here for the same reason, and any time we could go out that door, and the guy I'm with, my life depends on what he does. If your life is in my hands, you have to trust me. You have to be my brother. That quote was from my guest today, Mr. Bob Pressler. That was in the 1991 National Geographic documentary Rescue Company 3, the FDNY. And I think that documentary has paved the path for many of us across this nation from what the standard truly is. Fortunate enough that I'm a third-generation firefighter growing up in the 80s into the 90s and have the ability to watch these legendary firefighters romanticize the job that I fell in love with, the very job that all of us fell in love with during that generation. So Bob and I sat down, we talked some tactics, we talked the behind the scenes of what that documentary was all about, and we talked about our friendship, and we talked about the love of the job. I hope you enjoy the episode. I know I truly enjoyed sitting down and talking with Bob, and I think that this episode will truly, truly bring to light the love of the fire service and where we've gotten to where we are today with the standards that have been set, the standards we need to keep. So no further ado, Mr. Bob Pressler, Rescue Company 3.
Hi, Bob. Thanks for joining me. It's been a long time coming. We wanted to do this, and I'm so honored to have you as a guest on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just start right off. Tell us about your career, how you just got started.
So my father was a fire chief in Crestkill, New Jersey. He started a junior program. So in, I think, 1964, there was a picture of me in the Daily News as a 12-year-old hanging out the window. And I joined the juniors, became a fireman there. Went to Oklahoma State University for fire protection engineering. And I came back from that, all I wanted to be was a fireman. I lived in a firehouse on campus. When I came back, all I wanted to be was a fireman. A place called Summit, New Jersey gave a chief's test. So I took the chief's test, ended up placing number 1, no fault of my own. So I was there for 3 years, got called for Jersey City, but I knew New York was going to put a class on. So friends of mine actually had them hold a spot in Jersey City. Said I was skiing, they couldn't reach me. And I got called for New York City and ended up in New York City.
What year was that?
I ended up getting on in 1979.
1979.
February of 79.
How long was Proby school in 1979?
6 weeks. And we came out as firemen. I mean, that's the problem with, most Proby schools now. I know a guy that went for 18 weeks or 20 weeks, and he was in the burn building twice. So what did he come out as? Mike Lombardo's favorite story, an high-angle underwater bomb squad guy. Everything except for the fire stuff that they need.
I think that's a problem even with the officer training we have. We went through 6 weeks of leadership training, and we did 2 days in the burn building. That's really what it's about. Yeah, all the other stuff, but there's no such thing as administrative emergency.
No, there's nothing that can't be fixed tomorrow.
Exactly. So, but commanding your men on the fire floor, that's very different, and that's a learning curve, especially if you do your career in a truck. Now you find yourself in an engine, it's a different role,
100%.
So I think that's something where we're failing our young officers, is not getting more hands-on experience on the leadership level. Now, leadership comes from within the company a lot of times, but you have to be able to give those orders or just give the communication to the chief alone.
Or know why you are giving those orders. Yeah. One of the things that's funny is if you look at where a fireman comes up, well, if he was a bad boss, he may not know any different already. So we had a thing, every place I've ridden, we stopped stealing nozzles years ago. We'll steal a nozzleman. Because most times the kid wants to go, it's the boss that doesn't. So it's, hey, you ready to go? Come on, let's go. And you take him and you give him the experience of actually putting out a fire with someone that maybe knows how to put out a fire.
Yeah.
So I've done that for a long, long time. Now, if they don't want to go,
different story.
Different
and
story.
That, I really believe that true leadership comes from taking young kids to places that you've been, they never thought they could go.
I had a kid the one time, I'm down in Delaware now, and Never been to a fire before. We got a 1-story private house. 2/3 of the back of the place is on fire through the roof. And we're sitting in the living room waiting for the line to come in, and the line doesn't come. So finally I send the barman out. He brings the kid in, and, he's got the sauces like this. I always kid with guys. I said, you have to know right then what you're going to say to this kid, whether he's going to go, you're going to end up giving a nozzle to somebody else.
Yeah.
So I have a whole little thing I recite. And I said, if you're ready, let's go. And the kid did great. But all he needed was someone to talk him through it. And after the fire, we walked through the whole thing again. This is where we did this. This is where you did that. This is where you couldn't see the fire. I told you to shut your flashlight off. Oh, there it is. No kidding. All those little things. So you have to be able to make decisions. You have to be able to control your emotions for those firefighters underneath you.
I think you know right away when you get the cat in the bathtub syndrome with the firefighter. My dad always told me is that if you make someone a man, he'll make them a fireman. That was his slogan.
Yep.
And I truly believe that if you were raised to be a man, then a good leader can make you a fireman. You have to be willing to go, though.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So 1972.
Yeah, 72 is when I went interior.
Okay.
I was an interior fireman for the first time.
And in 79, you're in the New York City Fire Department. And you got assigned to Brooklyn at a Proby school?
255 engine, which was a whole story on itself. But 255, 157. Just starting to get into their busy days. And what are we now? 40-something years later, they're still doing just fine, So spent 3 years in the engine, working a lot in the truck. I had the opportunity right after I turned first grade. They tried to take me before I turned first grade, but the Queensboro commander wouldn't let them. I went to Rescue 4 with 3 years and a month on the job. They had a bunch of guys get promoted. I knew a couple of them. They spoke up for me. The captain took me. So I went to Rescue 4 for 2 months. And the day I told him I wanted to go back to Brooklyn is the day he was telling me I was on the next order.
Oh.
So I was gone in a day,
So that was what, 83?
82.
82-ish. So where was the work in Queens in 82?
The Rockaways and Jamaica, but nowhere near the firehouse. I remember one morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, beep, boop, rescue goes. I get on the rig, I start getting dressed, and I look, and everybody else is getting back in the corner and going to sleep. And one guy looks at me and goes, if we make it to the bridge, you can get dressed.
Yeah.
You're going to Far Rockaway, and you can't get there from there,
I don't think people realize the square mileage of some of the boroughs. And for one rescue, that's a big area.
Huge area. So then on top of it, they still had the hazmat at the time. They're having a lot of trouble with funding. They were sending stuff out to get repaired that was coming back half repaired. So I talked to some of the people, and I said, I'm going to go back. And they said, at this point, probably a good thing. It's before hazmat was formed. So there was a lot of little issues, very little work. I went back to Brooklyn, ended up going to 157. And then when I had just over 5 years on, the commute was starting to get me. And I went to the Bronx. So I ended up in 92 on an onion skin, which I didn't get transferred. I went up there pending transfer, ended up in the truck, and then finally transferred to the truck.
How long did you do in the truck before you went to 3?
On and off about 3 years, because I was still really assigned to the engine. So it was just over 3 years, and then I went up to 3.
With 3 years in the early 80s in 44 truck.
It was good.
It's like 10 years now, packed down to 3 years.
When I went to 92 engine, I went in July, but the following year, I just started tracking. And I remember, I've lost the papers now, but I started at the beginning of March until the beginning of June. Every time I worked, we stretched. That's something. Sometimes rubbish in a vacuum. I mean, sometimes it was nothing, but for 3 months, we always put hose on the street for something. So a lot of fun.
And the place is still doing tremendous work
and
today.
they're still doing very well, very well.
So what year did you go up to 3?
I went in 88. I had gotten burned at a can job. You talk about getting too comfortable. So I'm cooking lunch. We're going to the same building we go to every day at lunchtime for a false alarm. So I turn off the meal. I don't want to burn anything. I jump on the rig. I don't put my boots on. I got the can. Well, now we turn the corner. It's out a couple of windows, same building. Get in the apartment, and I was very cognizant of the fact that I didn't have boots on. So we get all the way down to where the fire is. I'm moving up with the can, feel the floor. It's all right. It's all right. And I slid my leg out into a painted foyer. Paint went right through the pants into the knee. Ended up with a 3rd-degree burn, just the size of a quarter. But because it was on my knee, ended up in the burn center. They did a skin graft on it. While I was there is when, as soon as I came back, I got the call from 3. So next time they were looking for a guy, I went.
It's funny, I always say, you give me your 4th fire or your 400th fire, this job is a way of humbling you.
Absolutely.
It's just it, right? Sometimes you just need a little smack in the face to say,
It's
you know
the
what?
same building every day, same time of the day. Here it is again, 11:55 Sheridan, maybe. But, it was one of them things. And we turned the corner. It's like, but I thought the funny part of that story is I was cognizant of the fact that I didn't have my boots on. So I was very gentle moving up. And it was when I just, that extra 2 inches, my right knee went into the painted floor and the paint right through the pants.
In 88, you go up to Rescue 3. Where they were in Manhattan at that point in the
Yep,
Heights?
still in Manhattan.
That generation of Rescue 3, I feel, at least for me, has shaped the FDNY. We had our war years, but that late 80s, early 90s Rescue 3, I feel, is probably the best fireman ever to walk this earth because it was a different type of camaraderie, a different type of brotherhood, I feel like, that you guys brought to the table. Is there something behind that? It was just because of guys in great places doing good work, or is there something special about that group of guys you worked with?
I think it was, it was a great group of guys. I think it's where they worked prior to coming there, and they brought all those firefighting mentality there. And I think the biggest thing about Rescue 3 is the gentleman's rescue. We weren't there to do your job. We were there to do our job. And if you didn't need us, we didn't do anything. We weren't trying to steal the line or we went about our business. Getting to the floor above secondary trucks working on a door. You got it, boys. We'll get the other doors. We were one of the first ones to have the rapid tool. So we'd get 4 other doors sometimes where they were struggling with one. And then we'd offer the tool. Hey, do you want this? I mean, that part of it was a lot different.
I think that it's still there. My whole career I ran in with 3.
Yep.
I'm running in with 1 and 3 now. I'm very fortunate to have the rescues they work with because they're still tremendous firemen and they know where to fill in the gaps and they don't overstep the boundary. Most times, sometimes, you get a little...
There's always one.
Chested, and we're very territorial about our work. We're type A personalities. You can't get around that.
No.
I can't say I can think of one instance where I stood out with any of those 2 rescues where there was a problem. It still is the gentleman's rescue. And I think that comes from the standard that you guys set many, many years ago. And I think what makes Rescue 3 especially special is because they still stand true to the standard. We're losing so many standards across the board in the fire service. Being that I'm still running it with these guys, just know that they are still doing the right thing. And
it gets harder and harder, because everybody wants a piece of the fire because the work isn't what it was. So sometimes everybody crosses that line a little bit. Funniest story, I'm driving one night, we're backing into quarters, and they give out a box up like 210 in post, 208, up someplace up 95 and 36. Well, we're on the rig. So, we're gone. We pull up, second due, 95, there's 36s. They got fire out 3 windows, 3rd floor apartment. And it was vacation mix. So we had 7. So when I drove, I never got dressed. I always got dressed at the rig in case they needed something. 30 seconds, minute behind everybody. Hey, we need this, we need that. So I just followed the line. I'm an extra guy now. I get up to the fire floor. Fire's out in the public hallway across the whole lobby, on the 3rd floor, the whole foyer. There's 2 guys wrestling. They go, So I go to the floor above. The half landing window is in, which never happens. Stop, get the half landing window out, get up to the floor above. And as I go to turn to go in the apartment, out comes somebody, runs by me and down the stairs. I'm going, this is a little different. I go in the apartment and there should be 3 people in there. The inside team. Can't find anybody. Fire's coming up in the kitchen now. This place is starting to go. Through the whole apartment, there's nobody in the apartment. Come back to the door. Here comes 93 ends with the second line, knock everything down. And then one by one, everybody else shows up. And it's funny, we had a dispatcher riding with us, so there's a video of me later in the street yelling at the officer. So the guy wrestling on the fire floor was our one guy that could always be counted on to get in an altercation. The guy I saw coming out was a detail for the night. He told us that when he went in the apartment, the Jeopardy song started playing, and when it stopped, he left. And the officer, when the apartment started lighting up a little bit, he went out the front windows, up the fire escape to the floor above. So I ended up in there alone. So there was quite a discussion after that fire, you know.
Something I want to ask you about, and I think that probably a lot of the listeners, when they hear your name, Bob Pressler, they go back to something that I think has influenced the fire service on so many levels. National Geographic movie in 1991 that was filmed. Some of the behind the scenes of that, just I'm curious how that was perceived amongst the guys when they arrived. Did they become part of the crew? Did they eat with you? Were they uncomfortable being there? And how long did it take for them to become comfortable? And then once they became comfortable in filming the fires, how did the job receive that once it did hit the air and it went out and it went national?
Ironic part about them showing up at the firehouse is we stopped going to fires. They were staying at a hotel in Fort Lee. They'd stay there a day and a half, and they'd say, listen, we're going to go back, shower, change clothes, we'll be back. Within 15 minutes, we'd be at a fire. It was pathetic how long it took them to go to fires. The one time they were there, it was so slow, they said, listen, we're going to go across the street on the roof of the building across the street, and we're just going to film. Can you all just pull out like you're going somewhere? So they go across the street, they wave down, beep-doop, rescue's going to the Bronx. So engine, truck, and chief go right, we go left, we're all at the back step waving at them, pointing, because you could see it across the bridge. They're going to a fire right across the bridge. Pretty nutty. The first night there, they were brought up by, then he was calling himself the PIO officer. And he told them, you're not allowed on the rigs unless I'm here. And he went home. So Captain Calderon at that point said, go put your stuff on the rig. We really can't, you know. He said, well, I'm a captain. He's a lieutenant. You can put your stuff on the rigs. Beep-doop, rescue's going to Harlem. Come on, it's a fire, vacant building, it's going to be a good fire. So they passed me a camera. So we go to Harlem, got a vacant building, 5 floors going. We're not doing anything, so I'm filming. With that, the captain looks up and goes, where's the people from National Geographic? And not realizing that when you film, you record, I go, them FNA didn't get on the rig. So he just shakes his head. You know, we're there for another half an hour. We go to another run. We come back, and they're all standing there like puppy dogs. Did you get anything? Yeah, I said, it was a great fire. So we're going to squeeze in the house watch. They hook up the camera to the TV, and they start playing. And I realize, because the loudest voice on the video is mine, and here comes the captain going, where's National Geographic? And it was like slow motion. Well, those... And they looked at me, and I said, well, you didn't. He told you to come with us.
That's great.
They were well received. It took a little while. You know, everybody knew that they were there to try to document what was going on. They never truly caught a lot of work. It was just when they were there, it shut us down. If they'd go home, we'd go to a fire. They did get a couple near the end of their filming because they had a deadline. Near the end of the film, they caught a good vacant building, top floor. That's towards the end. You see the tower ladder up. Yeah. But they really caught very little decent work. I actually rode the one night with one of their cameras as an extra and got some inside shot. But nothing at the time. The cameras weren't as good as you could get today. We strapped the camera to my chest the one time, went to a Second Alarm City Island in a restaurant. So we're in the bar downstairs, we're pulling ceilings. Oh, no, it's above us. We go up to the second floor of this bar, and we're looking down a hallway, and it's all fire. And I go, this is going to look great. And I look down, the lens is gone. The camera's still sitting there, but there's no lens. So after the fire, we're down in the bar, moving stuff off the floor, and we found it, put it back on, you know.
No footage.
Didn't get anything. No
Did
footage.
you get your name in the credit?
I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all the way at the back. So it was fun. It was tragic because that's when Al got killed.
Yeah.
You know, between the end of their filming and when it came out. That seems to be the thing with the rescues. Rescue 1, the guy killed during filming.
I guess, I mean, the positive is that now you have a forever tribute for Al.
Absolutely.
Which is pretty cool.
Yep.
And it also brought the light of what the FDNY was doing and the dangers behind it during those years. I mean, everyone read a report from Engine Company 82. If you're into the job, everyone read it. But it's a book. And as much as that's realistic, I think it's probably a fiction/nonfiction book. In reality, this was all real stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it was documented by the best of the best. And I think that, again, that set the standard for where Rescue 3 is today, was that group of guys. But I think it set the standard for so many fire departments across the country that still use that as like a guide of what's the right thing to do. When they had you guys talking in the back of the rig,
Yep.
that is like absolute gold for what the brotherhood is.
Yep. And almost everybody from that is gone. That was in the back of the rig. Me and Lieutenant Cogan, Mike Cogan, I think are the last two. It's one of them terrible things, right?
Now, when it did come out, how did the companies that you guys ran into perceive when that went national? Were they okay with it, or?
I've never heard any bad reviews, that anyone got upset. Because you got to remember, right after that, there's a few more that came out.
Yeah.
Brothers in Battle came out not terribly long after that. And that portrayed the 5 rescues. The fire they go to after the 5th rescue, that was a tremendous fire on Claremont Parkway. They firebombed a motorcycle club, but they got the interior stairs too.
Yeah.
And it's truly the only fire where I said, can I get by? And they went, oh, absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. 5 floors of fire in a stairwell, but marble and door frames, so really not a lot burning, but real bad conditions on the upper floors. That was a pretty interesting fire. We had some fun.
When you and I were in Alabama together, we were at dinner, and I've told the story before. And you asked me, what's aggressive firefighting to you? And I thought I nailed it. I got this. And my take on it is I don't believe in aggressive firefighting. I don't think it's such a thing. Can you be aggressive? Yes. But as far as aggressive firefighting, to me, I always looked at it as like a series of mistakes that were compiled over time, and then you learn how to maneuver around those mistakes, and you get better.
Mm-hmm.
When you get better, you get quicker. When you get quicker, you get more confident. To me, that was always quote-unquote aggressive firefighting. And I gave you that answer, and you just kind of, okay, yeah. And you simply said to me, isn't it just doing your job?
Learning your job and doing your job.
There's so much behind that. Let's talk about that a little bit.
So you pull up and you got a fire in the frame. It's going top to bottom, right? 2-story frame, 2 floors of fire. The engine pushes in, knocks it all down, right? All the way to the attic. Great job. Aggressive fireman, right? Next day to go to the same fire, to get in the front door, the building falls down and seriously hurts them.
Good, thank you.
Seriously hurts them or kills them. What are they now? Right? It's a double standard.
Yeah.
Most times when people go, that was pretty aggressive, it's something that they won't do or have never had that opportunity to do. The more fires you go to, the better you're going to be. That might make people think you're aggressive. But to me, being aggressive is knowing your job, reacting to the curveballs. We're going through a little thing right now down in Christiana where we're getting the curveballs and people aren't reacting quick enough. So are the ones that are reacting quick enough, are they just more aggressive? No, they understand the job a little better. They're adapting to the situation. They're taking the risk or not taking the risk. Risk. What's risk on the fire ground? So when I teach, I always tell people, what's your definition of risk? And they go into these long drawn out of things. And I go, to me, it's just a fire, right? Everything we do is risky. I don't believe in, risk a little, risk a lot, because every time you go out, you risk everything. So I go to people, I go, so listen to this. I go, I'm picking up the rig, I'm by myself, and I find a fire. I have nobody with me, but I see the cheerleaders are at the high school. So I swing in, tell the cheerleaders to jump on board, and we're going to go fight a fire. And I go, is that risky? And they're all, yeah. But I go, why? Untrained, not the proper equipment, and an idiot for a boss. As that's what risk is there. If we do those things, we mitigate the risk. Properly trained, properly dressed, and good leadership mitigates the risk. Doesn't do away with it, but it actually makes it less risky. One-room fires should not be risky. The day there's a propane cylinder in it and it explodes, you know what? You couldn't have planned for that anyway, you know? So that's my take on the risk. But aggressive, it's learning your job. It's being all into whatever changes in the job or whatever you can learn and pick up. I've been doing it a long time. I'm still trying to find a few more shortcuts, right? A few more things to make it a little bit better, a little bit easier. I came up with a quote years ago: knowledge without experience is only theory. I can read a book on brain surgery. Doesn't mean I can do it. People read books and it thinks that it makes them a better firefighter, but unless they go out and apply it, they're just guessing it's going to work. So you need the experience. The more experience you can get, the better off you are. What's the next thing they say? Well, we don't go to enough fires. How do you beat that? Well, there's a million videos you can watch on YouTube that shows you what works and a lot of times what doesn't. There's some great training places you can go. You know, I teach at FDTN, still Disneyland for firemen. It is the best training you can get in this country. And it starts with an engine one, truck one, and it goes all the way up to a rescue class, which is the toughest class. City of Seattle, in order to go on that rescue company, you have to take rescue school at FDTN. So the training's out there. You have to seek it out, because just reading gives you textbook smarts, but doesn't give you really any fireground experience to go with it.
And now we're in a culture of people saying that experience really doesn't matter. And it's okay that you can read a book and understand the job. You can, like you said, you can understand the theory of it, but you need a multiple amount of mistakes to truly understand the job.
Absolutely. That came from the second meeting of the Life Safety Initiative people. Someone that was one of our American Fire Service leaders at the time stood up and said that in front of the crowd. You don't need experience, you need knowledge. He's from a place that he had no experience. So, of course, he's telling you it's knowledge, but it's not.
Something you said that I want to circle back to is the reaction, being able to react. There's a slogan that goes around, or an idea: expect victims, expect fire. I think that it's not about expecting something. It's being able to react to it under pressure, under real fireground stress. That makes you ultimately the greatest firefighter, is being able to react, not expecting. I think expecting gets us in the wrong frame of thought of understanding when you pull up to a fire. Yes, there's a lot of things you should expect, but it's how you react. Ultimately, that's what counts.
Yeah, that's someone who wants to say, I'm the one that invented this.
Yeah.
You know, so we look at it. There was a big thing, and I guess the time you were down there, they talked about the laying in, and, you know, do you lay in every time? Big thing on the internet right now, depending on your area, depending on your dish. There's so many things to it. Christiana right now on a phone alarm gets water. They get a water source. They can lay in, they can lay out, they can get their own hydrant, whatever it is, and we stretch a line. So if we do 800 boxes a year, that's 800 times they had to stretch, overcome difficulties, and get the line to the front door. So it's not that we expect fire, but we're setting ourselves up with repetition so that when it's on fire, the one thing I probably don't have to worry about is the line getting to the front door.
Yeah.
You know, and same with the aerial, same with the tower ladder. When you have people that don't have experience, you can't wait for the fire to get the experience, because they may not have the lead up down pat enough. So you have to be able to give them those repetitions. Our OV, right? We run an OV on the truck company. Every box alarm, he'll take a portable ladder, head to the rear, identify a window for VES. Does he VES every time? Absolutely not. But it'll come to the point where his one decision is, do I go? Right? He's done everything else so many times. That's automatic. Here I am. Take the window. Ooh.
I think the hardest part about VES is the path in which you take to get there. I mean, VES is an acronym. In my opinion, it's not a form of search. It's just a series of words that lead you into the path of where you have to be.
Yep.
The idea of VES is beyond that window. So all that is just the steps to the bridge, which is the ladder or fire escape. Then the reaction of going beyond the threshold, that's the actual where you're doing your work. You know?
Sure.
So all that is it's just the framing, almost
Yep.
the foundation.
But if a young guy hasn't done that enough
Yep.
times, getting by the pool, getting over the fence, getting the fence down, throwing a ladder on the deck, whatever it is, we try to take all that out of the mix ahead of time. So now he takes the window, there's smoke, there's the decision. Is that a condition I can deal with? Great little story. We just had a little fire. I was in a motel, so I'm talking to the first due truck officer. And he told me all the things that he did. And there was a door right next to the fire. And the fire's out, running underneath the overhead, you know. He looked at it. He looked at the amount of fire coming through the roof. He opted to go one more door. He said, because I was afraid getting in that door, ceiling's going to be coming down already. All good reasons. So I said to him, so decision-making is all correct, but what would forcing the door or opening the door have given you? It would have either justified all your concerns, or you might have found the victim behind the door. No different than everything you did, except for 10 seconds to pop a door. And all you try to do is give them that benefit, so there's one more thing for them to think about the next time they're confronted with something. It's just sharing information, but you want them to be able to pull it up when it's needed. That's the hard part, I guess.
Yeah,
you know?
and like forcible entry and door prop, it's a great tool. I'm not going to beat it up. But we have to talk beyond the door and what that really is. And that's just the obstacle. The mission is 10, 15, 30 feet inside the door. That's what we have to be concerned about. We're so caught up in today's fire service with drilling unforceable entry. It's important. It's a task we have to do. It's the task, not the mission.
Yep. And the doors, they're finally changing now. But, you know, the blue door is probably one of the most popular doors. It has springs in it. That's how they're not forcing the door. They're using the springs. The door moves. Doesn't happen in the real world. So like when we use the blue door now, they're not allowed to gap it anymore. They have to get the forks behind it the old true-fashioned way. Because when they gap it, you see them, they do it 2 or 3 times, they hear the wood crack, there's a gap. They're playing, you know? So we took that out.
It's almost like a false training narrative and a misguided skill set.
Yep.
Right? And then if you add some real life stress to it, it's blurred speed versus purpose, where you can't go from plan A, B, C, and D. You should always start with A. And I think that most times A will get it.
Yeah. If you understand, if we're talking forceful entry, if you understand all those steps, it will most times. And what I like about it is we teach it one way. I like about it is that when it doesn't work, you'll kind of know why. What hasn't happened like it always does. And that's the thing. And the other problem with a lot of training is that they do it in conditions like this right now. And then they put their face piece on. Well, then you add smoke. Then you add heat. Those are 4 different steps of learning a skill. FDTN has a forcible entry prop that's hooked up to a burn container. You force them, then they face piece, then then they light that thing on fire. You know what every student comes out and says? We were forcing it to the halide and got too hot to hold. Because the doors right next to the fire container were brutal. But what are they learning? They're learning a skill set under the worst conditions that they'll probably ever be in. And a lot of them are successful even with that. They drop it, they pick it back up, and they start over. But, you know, they get the steps of training. So not only did they learn the forcible entry, they learned the different conditions, how it affects what they do.
That's the main thing. That's what you and Jimmy bring to the table, is that real fire gun stress is so hard to duplicate in training. But that's probably the closest you're going to get to it.
Absolutely.
Because it is real stress.
And you know what? It's in everything that we do, unfortunately. So, you know, I used to teach a lot of self-survival when that was the thing. How to bail. How many different ways did it come down the ladder? Well, there's head first, there's reach out 3 rungs, flip around. There's a guy that wanted to do this other, call it the spread eagle thing. I mean, all weird stuff. In reality, if you think about it, head first is truly the way to go. Because what if there's 2 of you? I stop mid to swing and you can't wait any longer and you come out. Or the ladder isn't tied off like we do in training on the fire ground and you swing around because you came out fast and hit it and the ladder falls. There's so many little things that it doesn't pass the sensibility test on the fire ground, right? Bailing out the window. Where do you sit in the window? Right? Most times when they teach it, your back's against one side of the window, so you're doing everything in front of you. right? And then scooting over and going out the window. Well, if you're thinking of jumping out of that room, you're not sitting like that. You're sitting with your chest against it, with my head outside, praying that everything stays right till I go. It's we do ourselves a disservice in training. Breaching a wall. Did you ever breach one laying on your stomach? That's probably how you're going to do it. If the room's on fire, you're not up here going, oh, people have to look at the training and realize that there's several steps to it. And the end result is that you want it as close to fire conditions or real life as you can do it. Because if you can do it under those conditions, when it's not that bad, it becomes more of a, oh yeah, I can do this. I can do this.
Maybe take a step back from it. Common sense firefighting. It's the basics.
We've lost it.
We have. And it comes, I mean, social media has so many great avenues for training and learning, exposure for so many great people, but it's also a dangerous tool where we're doing these drills. They're being put out there. One I see often is mass confidence, where they're taking the mask off and they're moving around. Every time I see it, I saw one last night, the mask comes off and it just goes. And they're not teaching the left hand's locked onto that left hand strip. That's your low pressure hose. That's like the root of the foundation. Yeah.
Should be.
But when you see it out there on social media and people are just moving this mask around and throwing it around, it's dangerous. It's setting us up for failure for people that are going to catch a fire one day.
And the question is why? What I've seen, because I've been doing this a little while, is that there's now money in teaching. So everybody's out there teaching. And a lot of them are teaching stuff that they know enough about to teach people that don't know about it. A friend of mine, still out there teaching, is trying to become that next great guy. In a real short time, put 3 videos out on YouTube. One was a 798 cut without any of the numbers, completely out of sequence. But at the last cut, firefighters cutting this fire coming up because he completed the bottom before he went up to the left. He did a forcible entry on the blue door with the forks the wrong way. So bad that when the girl went to pop it, she actually flew out of the video. And I forget what the third one was. But anyway, I called him and I said, you got to be careful. This is you're advertising yourself. And he's like, well, yeah, but let me tell you why. I'm not saying everything we do is correct, but most of the things we do are pretty right to correct, but I think are a lot safer. A lot of thought went into the reasons why, so like I teach the 798, when they make the middle cut across and the bottom one, you switch hands. Keeps your feet out of the cut. Because you're in the boxer stance, if you don't switch hands, your first impulse is to step out where you have 3 sides cut. So you just rotate on your feet, switch hands, left-handed, back to right-handed to left-handed. I'm doing that for years. So, I do it because it keeps it safer for you. But he was doing stuff, and it's like trying to defend why it was wrong. What a fire coming up under the guy's coat kind of tells me it's not the right way to do it.
Let's talk about fireground discipline. And I think this is something that needs to be addressed across the board, from the biggest city to the smallest town. I don't like to say fire duty's down. Maybe from the war years, yes. I think fire duty is pretty consistent. And
spread out.
We are going to fires, and when we go to fires, we want to get a piece of it. It's the way we're wired, but we have to be disciplined enough to understand where we fit in at a fire. Ultimately, that makes you a professional firefighter, not a paycheck, or it's understanding where you fit in at a fire. The fireground discipline will automatically put you in that sequential order of understanding where you fit in, but it comes from discipline.
And especially when you have a department that has arrival procedures, writing assignments, you're supposed to do your job. I mean, because whoever's behind you. So funny story, a friend of mine posted a picture. He used to ride in a place that was known for stealing lines and doing crazy stuff. So it shows a picture of this engine company laying a line down to the front of a fire building and his company creeping behind it. And he says, yeah, as soon as they stopped, we grabbed the line and stole their fire. And I went to him, I said, you know what? You would have burned to death on the front porch because my operator never would have given you water. Oh, why do you got to be like that? You weren't the first to engine. Your job is to be the backup or to secure a water. It's not to steal the line. I'd never give you water. And he was all upset. You're upset for the wrong reason. So arrival procedures, I mean, everything is laid out for a reason. Someone sat down long enough to make them for a reason. So the discipline to follow it is what's important falls on the company officer. I mean, he's the one that has to enforce them not doing it. You don't want the chief coming up to you saying, why was your backup man? No, I'll take care of that, chief. And then you'll look at the engine company. In a perfect world, where's everybody in the engine company? Between what two things? Nozzle and a pump panel. If they're doing all their job, truck's a little harder. Split crews, going different places. Well, the discipline is I expect you as the OV to be on the rear fire escape. The roofman should be going where? Going to the roof. So funny story, I was still in Brooklyn, and I leave the names out of it to protect the guilty. Guy made a real good grab as the OV, gets in a fire apartment, finds a guy behind the couch next to the room that's on fire, drags him out on the fire escape, gets a medal. Real nice job. Terrific job. Went to his head. So fast forward now, probably 5 months, 6 months later, 7 o'clock in the morning, fire on Ocean Avenue. And I got the can. He's got the roof. We pull up, got light smoke coming out the front door. Fire reported on the first floor, someone trapped in the apartment. That's the report. So where's the roofman supposed to go? Joining building, aerial tower ladder, rear fire escape. And I see him heading for the other building, dives into the fire building. Now we're going to first floor. You can see it's first apartment on the left-hand side. Decent smoke. It's not a real good fire. I see him again. Goes into the fire apartment. So here's our roofman in the fire apartment. I go in, turns out it's a sofa bed. I'm hitting with the can, and there's a guy standing at the window, drunk as a skunk. There's 14,000 beer cans around this apartment. He goes to him, "Don't worry, I'm here to save you." Honest to God, almost the exact words. "Lean on me, and I'll help you out." Well, the guy can't stand. So he leans on him, and the guy's about 220, 230, and falls and hits his head on a weight bench on a crossbar and knocks himself out. So now we have a real 1045. So with that, the officer's coming in. He sees it, gives 1045. Not everybody's got to drag this guy out. So who shows up on a 1045? The division. Where's the victim? Leaning on the hydrant, drinking another beer.
Oh, man.
So it was quite the lesson. Do what you're supposed to do. And he didn't have the discipline to do it.
I think if you compare any winning professional sports team, from basketball, football to baseball, it's understanding where you fit in. But having that discipline, it does fall on the coach, the offensive line, the defensive line, the quarterback. They have a role and a job, and they expect you to make your position every time. At a fire, it's no different. And
it can't be different. That's what a lot of people, they think they're allowed to cheat sometimes. No, you're not.
And the cheating, I think, maybe comes from, we talk about staffing. The argument a lot of times goes, well, you have 6 guys in a ring. You can do this, this, and this. We can't do that. But it's the same game we're playing. It's the X's and O's. The firefighter IQ of it all is that understanding that you go down and play basketball at the park as a kid. How often are you playing 5-on-5 full court press?
Mhm.
Probably never. But you understand the game of basketball. You could play a 3-on-3 and understand where to pivot on that court to fill in the gap to ultimately gain position on the hoop and score a basket. Same thing on the fire ground is if you understand the positioning of where you have to be and never differ unless you're understaffed. When I say understaffed, that's how you ride and understand the game. Then you can pivot. But other than that, you have to make your position. As an officer, I don't want to know that you got to the roof or you got to the rear unless there's conditions. I want to hear the rear's clear. I don't want to hear the roof's open. I expect you to be there. If you can't get there, then you have to tell me. Because if you're only telling me, but also tell the roof guy, ladder 1 OV to ladder 1. I'm delayed in the rear. Get eyes on the rear for me. He should already hear that and be filling in that. But that's pivoting. He knows that's firefighter IQ, and that's where the discipline comes from. And when we get away from discipline, firemen die.
Absolutely. The other problem is that, and this will go back, and it's not a shot at him because he's done so much for the fire service, but when Chief Brunacini started doing his incident command, everything was based on radio traffic. We had a lot of this engine 1 on the scene, 2-story house fires showing we're stretching an 1 3/4 line. And I always used to say, no shit. I want to know when you're not doing that. So, you have SOPs and POAs. So an SOP, standard operating procedure. What's a POA? Procedure on arrival. If you're going to do something that's not in our SOPs, you should tell us. Don't tell me the first engine's stretching a line. That's what you're supposed to do. waiting to be told the first truck to search. There's something wrong with your system if those things don't happen automatically.
I think there's something to be said about if you don't hear anything spoken on the fire ground, things are going good. You don't have to be telling each other what to do. You should know what to do. When you start hearing chatter, that's when things are going bad.
That's the start.
Yeah.
That's the start of the curveball.
So silence is almost like a good thing.
Yep. Depending on where you're going. Sometimes it's just because they don't know what to say. But most times it is because things are all right. And being able to audible, you can't audible if you never had a plan. We go back to the sports analogy.
Yeah.
Football team goes out with 3-4 plays already called. He audibles to the one that fits what's there. Mm-hmm. But it started with a formation and a play. So that's what they all learned. This is what we're going to do. If nothing changes, we're doing that.
The ball's going left. If he thinks he's going left, no good. If he looks right, well, if that guy was supposed to be on the right, he's not going left because he wants to get the ball. He's out of position.
Absolutely.
Plays over.
Can the pump operator open the roof? There'd be a lot of pissed off people if he tried to. I mean, but we used to use that for places that said they didn't have riding positions. So pump operator just leaves the rig then, right? Well, no, he has to. Well, then I guess you have some riding positions. It's just that little bit. Which ones are you going to enforce? It's like the NFPA. We'll pick some of the procedures that we like, and don't wear that helmet. It's 10 years and a day old. Yeah. But we only have 3 people on a fire truck. So,
with the discipline as well, let's talk about crowding the stairs, crowding the fire department. Guys want a piece of it, but when things go wrong and the dominoes begin to fall the wrong way, the way we go in, a lot of times, the way we come out. So we can't clog those stairs, and that's a problem. It's just a problem across probably the nation, but in our job, we have so many guys.
So many people.
That everybody wants a piece of it. Don't block the stairs. I had a captain, great guy, legendary fireman. That was his biggest pet peeve. He would be screaming at companies, get off the fucking stairs. That was his thing. And now, being an officer on years later, I look back at that. It makes so much sense. I mean, it always made sense, but now it really makes sense because now I'm managing this company. I got to make sure we get my guys out. If I get to that door and it's blocked, I can't get my guys out. It's a problem.
I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, there's been some, nationwide, there's been some horror stories pushing guys up into fire because everybody's coming up the stairs. Come on, go, 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 go. Nowhere to go. We had it a couple of times when I was in Brooklyn in Queen Anne's. An attic of a Queen Anne is a tough fire. And they're pushing up. Come on, get in there. Well, if you can't get all the fire, there's nowhere to go yet. And, now you lose water or it gets a kink, and now you're trying to back out and they're trying to get up. I blame a lot of it on officers that have let it happen. Over time, who said it was all right to do that? Who was the guy that led the charge to start blocking it? If I'm second due, I'll tell my crew to stay someplace and I'll go past. Now if there's a place we can get to, we'll go. If we can get to the floor above or another room that no one else is in. But it's everybody wants a piece because they don't go to enough fires, they think. So we end up with that overcrowding. The discipline has to start with the officers that teach the firemen. No, we don't do that. These are the reasons why. Yeah, but so-and-so is trying to get by us. Well, good, don't let them by and then explain to them why.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. If we all stand aside, then you come pushing by. So now you get the one guy stands across the stairs. But no, it's a terribly real problem, and it's had disastrous results already.
Yeah, and a good size of takeaway that I use as an officer is that if we go into a tenement and I realize we have a small landing, I'm sizing that up. We're all right, we got a small landing. If we have to go, there's a good chance that's going to be blocked by guys. If you are the second due engine officer and you're kind of hanging out, lighting up the line, managing the water resource, keep that landing clear. Mm-hmm. Don't let your men on that landing, because if shit goes wrong in the fire department, that's what they're coming to, is that landing, and they got to get down.
Yeah, or if you have your officer's tool or someone close by or the truck left the axe, pop the off door.
Yeah.
It's another forgotten thing. Very rarely do you see the off door gotten. It's a place of refuge. If you can't get down, well, at least the cross is going to be better. But getting people, we don't want to do too much damage. Listen, I didn't light the fire. I'm here to try to stop it, but I'm getting one of my people hurt because you don't want to force one extra door. So there's a lot of little things like that just over time have gotten forgotten.
And a great move with that I've used in the past was Iron's guy starting on the door, have the can man grab the bunny, boom, boom, boom. Takes 10 seconds.
Oh, absolutely.
Now you're off there is good. He's ready to swing if he needs it, and off we go.
Yep.
That's the guy when that moment when he's waiting to hit. There's a pause of like, well, am I ready? Well, just pop that door real quick.
Sure.
Right. just something to think about, where I feel like in the moment, when we feel that internal clock's ticking a little bit too long and you're not moving, you're not doing something, there's something that can be done.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But again, have they been taught that that's okay? Is the guy now going to stroll away? I figured I'll go look upstairs. We had a little bullshit attic fire one day. We're calling for the can, right? Can't find can man. Well, it turned out he decided it was okay to go check the basement. It was a private house, because they had talked how someone should always check the basement in a private house, especially when you're 2.5 frames, to make sure it's not a basement fire that's showing. So he wandered away. You know, good intentions, wrong time, bro. You know, and again, the discipline of staying with what you're supposed to be doing.
There's something so important with the can man. In Proby school, we're not doing justice for that position, because you come out of Proby school, you carry the can for 6 months sometimes. I don't think that we teach young firemen how important that position is. The discipline you need when you commit to that fire department, and now we find the room, the irons in the officer may pass that room to search. You have to communicate how important discipline is to stay at that door.
Stay there.
And then communicate your water. If you're out of water, you got to let us know. Find a door. Maybe the irons got to go pop a door real quick and give it to you. But these are things you have to communicate. And I don't think that the firebound discipline in positioning is being passed down from the academy to the firehouse. That's the conversation. A good tabletop drill, I think, is talking about the can man and what that position really entails and how important it really is, and how you can't go check the basement. You need to be right with that officer, right with that irons guy at all.
That's why we had so much fun in Alabama, right? There's all this can stuff, driving it back, and everybody's like, "Oh, wow, that's amazing." You know, it's like, no, that's what it's for. You know, I always look at the guys too, is that they'll go in schools or, you know, office buildings. There's fire extinguishers all over the place. And so if we run out of one, run down the hall, grab me another one. Sometimes they end up coming out with 3, went in with 1 because guys want them at home, but in the old days. But, you know, that's why they put them in buildings. The first line to get on a fire. Why shouldn't we do that? You know, so it's one of the little things that, like you said, it's just not done enough or explained enough.
Let's talk about victim removal. I reached out to you probably, I don't know, months back. And it's something I was thinking about. I reached out to a couple of guys that I really, really trust that have been around a long time. And across the board, they all had the same answer. I personally I think we're overthinking this. Is there a positive side of this? Yes. But we can't get too in-depth on repositioning victims, doing all these tricks. Not that it's not right, but I think sometimes just getting the victim out, whatever way you can get them out, is the best way to do it.
So I'm going to throw a curveball at you. Did you ever read the book on air management?
No.
From Salt Lake City guys?
No.
Got some good information in it. But one of the things they said is that you should never have your vibrator alert go off inside a burning building, because you should always be able to look and say, oh, I'm down to whatever amount, it's time to leave. And I always said the problem is they never identified what size building that is. Is that a 1.5 million square foot warehouse? Or is it a 900 square foot private house? Huge difference between those two things. So with victim removal, what's the one thing no one talks about? Proximity to the fire. So if you make it down a hall under the fire and you can grab any part of a victim, that's the way that victim is coming out. The other disservice we do is webbing became real popular for a while for victim removal. Where do we practice that? Apparatus floor in a firehouse, or I can walk around you, drape all the webbing, do whatever you want with it, and then pull the victim out. So at FDTN, when we do the basement fires, we have people ask, can we go again and try webbing? Absolutely. We won't let them use it during the beginning of it. The problem there is at the base of the stairs, the victim's usually just a couple of feet to the left, but they're not quite in the ball, but the area to work in makes the victim a ball. We've had them come out with an arm and a leg, thought that was impossible. We've had an armpit and a neck because you can't see. And they take so long to get the victim trussed up. It's not practical all the time. So the quickest way is to grab and go. How does that happen? Well, it depends on where presented to you when you find the victim and what the fire's doing. It's not waiting for you. You know, so going up a set of stairs, it'd be great if the head and shoulders were always on top. So that person, then you could drive up the legs. That's probably the only time I'd reposition. But if the fire doesn't let me, what's the alternative? We're going to try to flip this victim around without getting burned to death? Right? So the fire tells you how to get the victim out. If I have time, sure. Get them under the armpits, drag them out, arm bar, drag them along the floor. But is the fire letting us have all these options? Or can you reach in and you see a foot and you grab the leg and you just want to get them away from the fire?
See, that's where my mind goes when I see this. I see that there's good intention behind it. I never thought about the size of the building, man. That's huge. Where, yeah, if it's a huge building, warehouse, maybe a parking garage, yeah, you have time to reposition that victim. My mind automatically goes to a project, to a tenement, a tight private dwelling with shit everywhere. And I'm just grabbing a guy and getting it back, fire rolling over your head. This is what I'm thinking in my mind as I'm going. That's more realistic to me.
It's more realistic to most people. So Montgomery, I'm chief of Montgomery. I was away, get a fire with people trapped. So the one thing I always told my officers, if the initial call says people trapped, call for help right away. Just transmit a second line. We can always send them home. We don't go to fires with people trapped. It's going to upset the entire balance of the operation to start with. Well, most of the people reading this stuff on Facebook are the same. They haven't gone to a fire where there's been people trapped. So they're soaking up information, but we go back to having the experience to realize that only makes sense up to here. It doesn't make sense past here.
Data is a hot thing right now.
Yeah.
I think data, is there good to it? Maybe. But it's very regional. You can't take data from the West Coast and compare it to the East Coast in an urban environment. It's very, very different data.
Oh, absolutely.
We all have to be playing the game to get accurate data, and many places are not. I think you have to be careful when you start reading data and then making policies
based off someone else's.
Yeah.
And listen, unfortunately, that's what UL NIST did to us. Remember when the roofman wasn't allowed to open up the roof anymore? 4 days later, they had the fire near Squad 41's quarters in that project-style building where they took out, 30 1045s? Because they never got the bulkhead door. Mm-hmm. I don't remember any other fire where we took out 30 1045s in a project building. Because why? Because someone always got the staircase door. It's just, we relied on other people's information to change our policies. And we're big enough, we should embrace the other information.
Yeah.
We should look at it. There might be some good in it. There's so many little ones like that. So forcible entry. As soon as they pop the door, what do they tell them to do?
Check behind the door, right?
Check behind the door, and then what? Control the door.
Control the door, yeah.
So we've got a whole 2 generations of firefighters now that force the door, do this real quick and close the door. I teach people, especially in a private house, leave the door open.
Like a fine wine.
Yep,
Let
exactly. And then you explain. So if it goes all the way up, where's fire?
Stairs.
Could be upstairs, bank down, new energy efficient house, right? If it goes midway, neutral plane, probably on that level, probably not in the front, because it would be still sinking. And if it doesn't lift at all, it's probably in the basement. Simple things. Now, in that 10, 12 seconds, if you're not dressed and ready to go, control the door. Right? Yep. I mean, that's the whole point of it. But they were told something, but there was no, just like getting a kid's toy and it has either a 1-page assembly or it's the other one that has 17 pages. And you got to read it all. There's more to it than just that one thing of forcing the door and controlling it. There's a lot more to it.
I think a lot of it comes from social media, instant gratification, short little clips, the cliff notes of information. No one's reading the book.
Yep. No, absolutely. That's a great way of looking at it. And scrolling by it. It's instantaneous. Read this much. Oh, look at this one. So
I feel like Instagram, what I try to do with a lot of my posts is spark interest on a topic that allows you to dig deeper somewhere else, or wait for a part 2 I may do, or reach out to me on the side, which I get almost daily.
Which is
and then
good.
We have a conversation, and
Yep.
I'll talk a couple days with certain guys about what that post meant and what it is. I wish there was more room to give more, but sometimes it gets lost. It's just to spark your interest, and we'll talk a little more.
Yep.
But it doesn't end there. That's just the beginning. It's just a preview of a topic.
And you hope more and more people realize that is the idea. The idea is just to whet your appetite to seek more. We always call it being a student of the game. You know, there's certain people that are students of the game, and there's certain people that they're just there. They think they know enough. They don't have to study anything else. We're just there. Like I said, to this day, every day I'm doing something in the fire service, reading something, looking at something, trying to stay current. But it's hard. It's hard getting other people to think that way.
I think it's just the way certain people are wired, and I think that's why we all found each other, is because generations of generations of generations. But we're all like-minded, where we can't turn it off.
No,
You know?
that's for sure.
Yeah, and all we want to do is go to fires. They get better at doing them, and that comes from being all in. This is something I don't want to go down the road of work-life balance, but that's the hot topic right now with the next generation. Is like, well, I need some alone time. I need some personal time. Okay, man. Listen, this is your first couple of years. I mean, your son's brand new. He probably works every day. He's probably there all the time because he wants to get better. He wants to show the guys, hey, I bought into this. I'm part of this.
Mm-hmm.
I want in.
Yep.
I want it. I want to be a part of this.
I want to be the best probie I can
Yeah,
be.
and you have to show this. It just doesn't happen.
No.
We've lost that, or never even really begin to identify that that's really what it's about, because they're coming in saying, well, you work 2 days a week and you have this off, you can work your side job, and that's how they're selling the job now. That's what people are coming. You get this much vacation, you get 3 or 4 days off a week, and you kind of just come twice a week.
Yep. Or when you work 24s, you work 7 times a month. In a bad month, you might have to work 8. And that's what it's been. It was something that I don't think everyone realized it was something that had to be pushed, about being that best probie, or that everybody before you did these same things. And now with the, whatever they call the interchange, you know, where you go to, how many people come from a C company to an A and go, oh my gosh, this is so different.
Yeah.
Can I stay?
Yeah.
How many go from an A to a C and say, is it up yet? Can I go back? So that's the only reason I like that program.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're saving some people. Go back. I get out of probie school. Following year, we go to St. Patty's Day parade. Meet a guy I stood there in probie school. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? He's going, oh, man. He's like, oh, we had a terrible night last night. I'm like, really? You know, fires all night? You know, he goes, no, he had 2 runs after midnight. Well, he had gone to a place where they shut down at night. I was in 255 engine. If we went to bed before 4 o'clock in the morning, we were having a banner night.
Yeah.
You know, but I said to myself, here's a guy that's now down that path. If he ever got promoted and went to a busy shop, he'd be like, what an eye opener. So I like the program for that they do get exposed to the other end of it. But, you know, for a year, I don't know.
A year's a long time.
And that's why I guess they've, you know, kind of fine-tuned it a little bit. But it does have some merit.
I do like it in the sense where you're saving someone's career, because it's just a matter of time before you go to a place doing nothing, that becomes the norm. Like, that becomes okay.
Yep.
And you become comfortable.
Yep.
And then you get the guy that comes from a great place, goes to one of those places, and then they realize how good they really have it. And they come back, they're that much more grateful
for being in
that
a
place.
shop.
You know?
Yep.
So it's so important that it does get mixed up. But, you know, we just poached a guy from a great Brooklyn company, an A company. He knew somebody, went from an A to an A. I'm so proud of that. He found value in what we were doing. Our tempo,
Yep.
the way we drill, the way we go to fires. He loved it.
Hmm.
And that was really cool. But we've also taken guys from C companies and brought them in. And then we have guys that just can't hang. And it's not that we're any better than them. We're just different people.
We're just different. That's what people have to understand too.
Yeah.
Not better, not worse, just different. We're us. This is how we do stuff.
I always say good guys gravitate to great places, and then not shit guys, but the guys that gravitate to the slower places, that's what they want out of the job, and that's fine. And we're very lucky enough in our job is that we're so big that there's a different flavor for everyone.
And you can find anything in between.
Yeah.
You know, which is nice. You just wish, or you hope that the job understands that sometimes too. You know, find spots for the people that want to be in those spots.
All right, so let me ask you something. One fire that you could get back. What is it?
So I probably had a year, 14 months, 15 months, still in the engine, working in 157, second due, 6 o'clock in the morning, private house, down towards 159. Report of a father and son trapped in the attic. So we go around back 35, we throw it up. I mean, I'm the junior guy working, and the lieutenant turns to me and goes, go see if you can get him. I go up this ladder. I go up to a typical attic window in those houses, 18 inches by maybe 2 foot, maybe a little more. Get the window out, get in the window, land in a bathtub. That was my first surprise. Get out of the bathtub, get to the top of the stairs, black and hot. And you got to remember now, I've only been on the job 14 months. I'd come from a place where I was a fireman. We didn't really go to fires. So I know kind of what I'm doing, but I don't have that experience. So I cross the top of the stairs, and it gets hotter. So now I'm by myself, and I'm in that unsure. I cross back across the top of the stairs, heading out. I go back across the stairs again towards the front. Now, this is something I'll never know. In my mind's eye, I see a flash of orange coming up the stairs. With that, I hear behind me, get out, get out, get out. Turn around. I come out the window. I still don't know how I got out the window because I kind of went out like head first and ended up on my feet on the ladder. But I always think of that fire. I'd take that fire again. I think I should have been able to get to those people. I don't think I was that far from them. They said they might have been under, afterwards no one's talking about it, but they said they were towards the front window. So I probably in reality had 18, 20 feet to go, which would have been a long way under those conditions. But like I said, I wish I knew then what I know now.
So taking that moment and then bringing that moment throughout your career, were you in situations on the fire floor, floors above, where that came in your back of your mind and said, I got to make one more room?
Yes and no, never quite like that. That was the one time. And the funniest thing is, I was still fighting the urge to go when I heard the yelling from outside. It's the guy that was on the ladder. So I don't know if he saw a little bit of orange in there. So I don't know what prompted him, because I was still arguing with myself. You're having these mental fights.
Yeah.
I was still trying to decide if I should try to go further when I thought I saw that little bit of orange and I heard him yell, and then that was it. That took my resolve right away. Now, what's interesting, though, is there's other fires where we did things that came to mind quicker because of that. Grabbing a door like you brought up before. Getting in a room, shutting the door behind you. VES in reverse, going to get in a room, shut the door, take the window. But no other one quite like that. So that'd be the one I'd take over.
All right. Well, Bob, I appreciate you coming on.
Not a problem.
I value our friendship, truly. For those of you listening and watching, me and Bob are teaming up. We will be in the South Alabama Hot second weekend in March. We're doing Search. It's a great conference if you have an ability to go there. It sells out quick. I think there's only 60 spots. It is good training when you say.
It's a good time. Yep,
yeah.
certainly.
And we do Guinnesses every night there. So you can come meet with us and hang out and have a couple of beers. So hope to see you there. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Bob and I. Before I go, I just wanted to jump back on and talk about Matt Daly's new book, We're Loading Up the Box, a pictorial collection of firefighting in New York City. For those of you that are not familiar with Matt Daly, which you probably are, just don't realize it, he's a photojournalist that was based in the Bronx who recorded the past 40 years of department history. This book is a collector's item, a limited number of books going to be published. That said, we have to get this pre-ordered by December 2nd, and you can do that by going to www.mtpublishing.com, or you can call 1-888-263-4702. That's 1-888-263-4702 to get yourself a piece of New York City Fire Department history. Matt Daly, We're Loading Up the Box, a pictorial collection of firefighting in New York City.